Why doesn't anything ever get done in American politics?
As I see it, there are two major problems within our political system. The first being we elect ego-maniacal morons to run our country, and the second being a for-profit media which is more concerned about making money than presenting high-quality unbiased news.
Why would we elect ego-maniacal morons to run our country? Wouldn't that make us stupid?
In a general sense, yes, but really only about 5% of the general population is really stupid.
Are these the only people who vote?
No, about 50% of citizens vote during presidential elections and 40% when only congressional seats are up for re-election.
Then how is it 40% of the US population, which isn't stupid, can elect ego-maniacal morons to positions of power?
They rely on poor, tainted or ineffective news to deliver their information, or just blindly vote for everyone in the same political party.
How many political parties are there?
Just two of any relevance. Democrats represented by a donkey, and Republicans represented by an elephant.
How many citizens are there?
Approximately 307 million.
Wait, there are only two political parties to represent 307 million people.
Yes.
How can only two political parties represent the variety of people and cultures in this country? I'm only 6 and realize that is impossible with only two political parties.
The donkey and elephant greatly benefit from the two-party systems, and use the media to divide the country by discussing polarizing issues, such as gay and reproductive rights, which have no direct bearing on the current economic issues we are having. They do this to distract Americans from the real problem, the politicians and media, by having them argue amongst themselves.
How can that be? Hasn't the 24-hour news cycle helped increase the quality of information we get, helping to prevent this division?
No, actually, the 24-hour news cycle is doing the exact opposite.
What? How is that?
The 24-hour news cycle was not created in response to the growth in newsworthy items. It was merely an attempt to make more money.
Isn't that what companies are supposed to do?
Yes, that is the goal of every company. But when a company prioritizes the growth of profit margins over the integrity of the services they provide,
okay.
There is also the absence of news reported by the AP and other parts of the world in the US.
Isn't that censorship?
Only if the government is responsible. Since a corporation is a private entity, censorship is called a production decision.
So instead of the government censoring our news, corporations are. What else?
To fill air slots, news channels are creating extremist opinion shows based on politics of extreme left and right television personalities.
What is wrong with that?
The problem is the network intentionally package these shows loosely as news, when in fact they are nothing more than opinions.
Okay.
This is only compounded by the fact the networks realized they can attract more views by having two irrational people with polar opposite opinions yelling and screaming at each other, than with two civil-minded people of discerning opinions having an intelligent discussion.
I don't understand.
Imagine WWE, but with politicians in Washington instead of wrestlers in a ring.
You mean a bunch of showmen pretending to be something much grander than they actually are, starting fake fights to get their fans excited and supporting them?
Wow, yes. That is exactly how it is. So we have one-sided opinion shows with fake discussions designed merely to prove their point and their points alone.
Shouldn't people be allowed to express their opinions though? Isn't that what America is all about?
Of course, but resolutions and reason do not sell. So broadcasters opt to give airtime to the very liberal and very conservative groups which only represent a small portion of the US population.
Did you vote?
Yes.
Then isn't this your fault too, since you voted for an egomaniacal moron?
That's not fair. I only have egomaniacal morons to choose from.
Only egomaniacal morons are allowed to run our government?
No, only an egomaniacal moron would want to run. Very rarely someone who is truly dedicated to the democratic process and the advancement of our society as a whole will run and win. So there can be some very intelligent, dedicated people in our government.
Hey, that's good news, right?
Not really. The morons outnumber them.
By how much?
It is not even close.
Could you take a guess?
I could probably count the good ones using my fingers and toes.
So how do the ego-maniacal morons keep winning against smarter, more qualified people?
The elephants and donkeys have a nationwide organization, which is also run by ego-maniacal morons, which decides who is given money and access to the resources of the political party to get elected on a local, state and federal level. And they almost always choose more ego-maniacal morons. This combined with the influence of corporations and their campaign contributions.
And this is completely legal.
Giving money to a candidate is legal, however, that money is not supposed to influence the politician's decision.
So people believe companies hand out millions of dollars to get ego-maniacal morons elected and don't expect anything in return.
No, everyone knows what is really going on.
Then why don't we stop it?
Because the people who are in charge of creating the laws are the same ego-maniacal morons who are abusing the system.
So we can't fix the system, because the only people who have a chance of getting elected are the same ego-maniacal morons who abuse the system in the first place.
Yes.
Geez, do we have to leave the country?
We would never leave America, because despite its problems, it is still the country which provides the most opportunity and freedoms for its citizens.
Even with all these problems.
Son, listen to me and listen carefully. Every individual and every country on this planet has problems, no exceptions. For anyone to think they are themselves, or their country is perfect, and needs no improvement, is delusional beyond hope.
Then why do people get mad when others suggest things which are wrong in America?
Since there are only two political parties, when the elephant or donkey try to do or undo something, it is usually something the other believes in or implemented, so they always try and stop the change.
But since there are only two political parties, isn't that always the case when someone proposes change?
Yes.
So, since any time one party tries to change something, the other party, corporate lobbyists, and those financially responsible for electing the party officials, organize a media campaign to drive an opinion wedge in the country to stop any progress.
Yes, by using the media and these opinion shows, disguised as news, to express one-sided opinions, and paying massive amounts of money to flood televisions with propaganda-style commercials, creating further divides between the liberals and conservatives in this country.
So the more we argue, the more the corporations and the ego-maniacal morons win.
Yes.
How the heck did this all happen, Dad?
This would require me to explain my micro-corruption cataclysmic event theory.
WTF, Dad, I'm 6. Couldn't you have just skipped to the part where you explain it in English?
Okay, imagine our government as your favorite candy store.
You mean the one with all the bins of candy? You get to sample and pick stuff to buy.
Yes.
I love that store.
Instead of candy, each bin could represent every and all aspects of our government. Instead of candy in the bins, there is the money and influence that part of the government is in charge of. And since there isn't candy in those bins, it is not longer okay to sample them.
Like the bins of nuts and dried fruit at the fancy grocery store?
Yes, exactly like the fancy grocery store.
But people still sneak those nuts and dried fruits.
Correct. Each person views their actions on an individual basis. They think, it's only a couple of nuts and pieces of dried fruit. They fail to see they are not individuals, but part of a larger collective problem which occurs day in and day out. This can be attributed to a measurable percentage of the population which lacks a moral compass, and will compromise the safety, welfare and even their own future for the advancement of their own self-indulgences.
I hope we're not talking about the nuts anymore.
The metaphor is dynamic, boy. The problem is only compounded by the fact people of low moral compass are attracted to politics, because people with low moral standards are successful at it, and over time more and more morons are put into position of power they are not qualified for. Eventually, given enough time, any system will be flooded with enough ego-maniacal morons to facilitate a cataclysmic event.
Why are ego-maniacal morons so good at getting elected?
Because having no moral compass makes you good at politics.
Why?
You need money to win elections, and people who have no moral compass are more than willing to take money from companies to win elections in exchange for political favors.
And they use all the money to make commercials.
Yes, if the 2010 federal election cycle, over $300 million was donated by corporations to politicians seeking re-election.
But isn't that legal?
Yes, they can now donate undisclosed amounts of money towards campaigns of politicians. The issue is of the $300 million spent influencing our elections, $126 million of that money is undisclosed.
What does that mean?
It means politicians were given $126 million to get elected, and they have not, and are not, required to say where the money came from.
Why would they give them all that money?
They want to help the person get elected who will support policies which benefit the corporation.
And that is legal?
Yes.
Can regular people do this?
Yes, but donations from regular people are limited to $2,500 per federal candidate. But corporations have far more money and represent the interest of a business entity, and not the citizens of the district.
So politicians have to tell people every citizen who donates money to them and there is a limit, but corporations can donate as much as they want, and the donations can be packaged so the politicians don't have to legally say where the money comes from.
Yes.
Why can't corporations do this?
The Supreme Court recently ruled in favor of corporations, citing they have the same rights as citizens and citizen associations, and therefore should be allowed to donate. But because they are technically not people, loopholes can be exploited to do things normal people can't.
So, the Supreme Court says corporations are like people, and should have the same rights, but really they are nothing like people at all.
Yes.
So if a corporation does something wrong, can they go to jail like you or I would?
No. In fact, most corporate executives not only never go to jail, they make 500 times more than the average worker in their company and often simply quit, keeping all the money they have made regardless of the condition the company they were in charge of is in.
Wait, so even if they do a bad job, they get to keep the money?
Yes.
I'm confused about one last thing.
What?
So the donkey and elephant actually like each other?
Yes, their mutual existence guarantees them two things. They will always hold a percentage stake in the government's control, and they always have the other party to blame.
So they actually benefit from dividing the country in two.
Exactly.
If freedom means the right to individual choice, and respecting others' rights to do the same, how do two people who disagree work together?
I suppose the only thing you can do is find at least one thing you can agree on. A common ground to stand on and call a foundation. From there, we can reflect on the immense sacrifice, diversity and struggle of previous generations, providing us a country where have the freedoms and opportunities we now enjoy.
So what do liberals believe?
Liberals believe the role of government should be bigger, with safety nets for the poor, sick and elderly, and expanded regulations on all industries to ensure public safety and compliance of federal laws.
What do Republicans believe?
The Republicans believe the government should play a smaller role, allowing the engines of capitalism to drive innovation and economic growth.
Neither idea sounds so bad.
Neither are.
Then what is the problem?
Ego-maniacal morons run the government, so no matter how great a law or idea is, you always get an ego-maniacal moron who is in charge of it.
So what you are saying is, we have ego-maniacal morons making laws, which are then planned out and executed by more ego-maniacal morons. And then you put a politically connected ego-maniacal moron in charge of the whole thing.
Yes.
And everyone is aware of this.
Yes.
So, if you can only choose from ego-maniacal morons, how can we ever rid of our government of them?
Good questions.
Shouldn't all Americans have one piece of common ground to use as a foundation for growth?
What?
We all think the government is run by ego-maniacal morons.
You know what? You're right. We do both think that.
So we all do agree ego-maniacal morons are running this country.
Yes.
You let a bunch of ego-maniacal morons take over our government on your watch.
My bad.